Wasabi guys, coming back at you with another 10 underrated commander cards. These may not be the most optimal choices among cards, however, I just like these. I feel like for the most part they're affordable compared to a lot of other cards that you will find across this format. That's not always the case. Sometimes we're going to have a card here that's $20, maybe more than that. But the point here is that they're underrated. They don't see as much play as I feel that they should. And I feel like they can make your deck better if you give them a chance. Or if you're just looking to play a deck using different cards, you're looking to expand upon your card pool that you use whenever you brew for new deck ideas, who knows? If I can give someone out there an idea on what type of deck they want to make based on just introducing them to different cards that they may have not seen or known that they exist before, then that's cool. So let's get it started off here with the first one, which is Muta Vault, which most people should know this card. The reason why it is underrated, to me at least, is it's viewed as a smaller scaled card, which is true. It is 1 mana to basically you get a 2/2 out there, which that's not really interesting. However, the important thing here is that it has all creature types, which is super relevant when you consider the fact that we just had this Commander 2017 set released and they're all tribal. If you have any sort of tribal interactions that benefits from having an extra creature out there that is considered a specific creature type, like say wizards or vampires, then you have that advantage there of having a land that can do that. Again, throw it into something like slivers. You know how many awesome slivers there are that just have all these static abilities and give all certain slivers like vigilance, +1/+1. They do all these cool things, and it's really cool if you could just make a land into a sliver. That's awesome. And hey, throw this into an Azami deck and you could just pay 1 mana to tap it and draw a card. That's pretty cool. Next one here is Unexpectedly Absent. Very similar to Chaos Warp in terms of power before the Tuck rule a while ago. The obvious reason here being you use it on someone's commander and force them to put it into their library, usually deep enough to the point where they're usually going to shuffle by then and their commanders are usually going to be lost to them, and it's usually going to be a while before you ever have to worry about them getting their commanders back. Super dickish card at that time. However, I feel like now it's not as dickish, and you still have a great card here that can deal with a permanent and just put it in deep into their deck to the point where you're not going to have to worry about it. This is also awesome removal in white. Usually white does exile, so that's the only bad thing about it, but still it gets around indestructibles, which is awesome. Next we have Imprisoned in the Moon, a 3 mana blue enchantment that can enchant a creature, a land, or a planeswalker, and that target becomes a land that taps for colorless mana. So super effective there. Automatically compare it to Song of the Dryads, which is a very effective 3 mana enchantment in green that does a similar thing. However, it can pretty much deal with every single problem rather than just creatures, lands, and planeswalkers. So significantly weaker version of that card in blue, but still it's in blue. One of the disadvantages of blue is its removal. It has bounce removal in this format in the form of Cyclonic Rift. Most other removal spells are just not preferable. We have Evacuation, but then again, it's a Wrath effect. It doesn't deal with things and make it difficult for your opponent to just get them back. It just bounces stuff to their hand. This card is super underrated in that aspect. Another cool thing is that you can just toss it into something like Azur the Enchanter. Use his ability to get it out whenever you need it. So that's pretty cool. Next card we have here is Copter Spy Network. From a couple years ago in Magic Origins, very similar to cards like Awakening Zone and Bitter Blossom. It is more mana than those cards, but the trade-off here is that you get some more value rather than just the tokens that you get during your upkeep. You actually get the ability to draw cards whenever you deal combat damage with 1 or more artifact creatures, so you have that bit of utility there to get the card draw, which automatically makes it worth the 4 mana that you're paying for it. And it really synergizes well with artifact decks, obviously, because Thopters are a big deal, so it's usually an auto-include in something like a Breya. But even outside of that, blue doesn't have a big creature presence in most decks, so whenever you can guarantee yourself that, that 1 Thopter during your upkeep, that's pretty decent. It's going to block for you all day, and you have a way to draw more cards, and yet again, it is blue. We want to draw a bunch of cards, and we want to have that creature presence. Next we have Slaughter Pact here, 0 mana to destroy target non-black creature. During your next upkeep, you have to pay 3 mana or you lose the game, so it's very similar to the other packed cards. Throws out that benefit there of being able to cast it for 0 mana. The only downside is you have the potential of losing your next upkeep. Why do I think this card is super underrated? It's basically just a cheaper Doomblade, which doesn't see a whole ton of play in this format. Well, the reason it is because when you look for good cards, when you look for good removal spells especially, you look for, in times of desperation, is this card going to perform well compared to other options? And compared to Doomblade, it performs better, because it is 0 mana. And you get to play all the spells you want to that turn, and just, you could be tapped out completely and save it in your hand and not have to worry about leaving mana untapped to answer things. And that is such a big benefit. Yeah, you are going to be paying mana your next upkeep, so you're losing out there. I would rather have to pay mana my next upkeep if it means I didn't lose my last turn because of a non-black creature. Next we have Sadistic Hypnotist, a 5 mana dude here in black, who can sacrifice a creature to force an opponent to discard 2 cards. You can only do this at sorcery speed, but you have a huge benefit here of being able to just empty your opponent's hands. There is a combo here with Nath of the Guiltleaf, which is pretty funny, and is usually in combination with other stacks strategies as well. But even outside of that nasty combo, you still have the utility there of having a sack outlet. It is only at sorcery speed, and there's other sack outlets in this format such as Viscera Seer, Ashnod's Altar, Goblin Bombardment that are usually staples in a lot of decks. However, Sadistic Hypnotist is usually overlooked because it is 5 mana and at sorcery speed, so it's not always going to be beneficial. You don't get to react to certain board wipes or anything like that, so it has that downfall. But a huge benefit here is that the upside, what you get for sacrificing creatures, is insanely good. There are a lot of token decks, so you could throw this guy into anything you want with tokens, and he'd be pretty good. You can just start pointing at players and say, hey, you discard 2 cards, and you're just sacrificing 1 token at a time. And even outside of that, you could also throw him into something like a Marin deck, for instance, and just benefit off of sack triggers there. There's some other little combos there as well that you could figure out yourselves, but I think it's just a very cool card here, and overlooked in comparison to Viscera Seer and other options in black, just because they are a little bit more efficient, and you can react in response to things like removal spells. So I think, yeah, I can understand why it doesn't see as much play, but it's still a very powerful card. The next we have Pontiff of Blight, one of my favorite cards on this list here, and a 2/7 that's going to block for you all day long. Give all your creatures Extort. It has Extort itself. Every time you play a spell, you're just going to be paying that additional mana there, and you're going to be draining your opponent's life away and gaining it yourself. That is just insanely powerful. And I think it's one of the most overlooked cards from Gatecrash, or just Return to Ravnica block altogether, when it comes to Commander, I mean. And a big reason why that is because so many people just overlook life gain, and they overlook any time you can just get a life swing of some sort between you and your opponent, put that distance between you and them. That's always going to help you win games, and it fits right into life gain strategies, but I also feel that it gets overlooked when it comes to mono black strategies in general, which is another thing that I have to bring up here. Usually life gain is essential in decks like Karlov or other decks that utilize life gain such as Aloro, but when it comes to just strategies in general in black, I feel that life gain is not usually taken into consideration. It's usually about removal and trying to draw as many cards and pay life to draw cards using cards like Necropotence, whereas cards like these that can slowly drain your opponent's life away while also gaining yourself life, these kind of get overlooked, and I think Pontiff of Blight is definitely one of those cards that you should consider. The next we have the last black card, I promise you. Sepal Kroll, Primordial, or Sepal, I don't know how you say that, it's very difficult for me. So when it enters the battlefield, not unlike the other Primordials, it kind of does something dependent on how many opponents you have. So this one, you basically just look at their graveyards and you get to bring a creature back from each individual graveyard of your opponents onto the battlefield under your control. And it has Intimidate there, so it can put in some work itself. So right there, you have the potential for just 7 mana to bring back the biggest threats in each one of your opponent's graveyards. Yeah, it has the potential of just being a dead card, but I like the upside more than the downside here, and I think it can really help you win games. It's a very dominant force whenever I see it being played. It's usually going to help people get back into games, and whenever you can do that in general, if a game's been going on for a long time, a card like this is what you want. You want a sort of win con here, and while I don't think he's definitely a win con, 3 creatures out of your opponent's graveyards is pretty good, and putting them under your control is even better. So not just for Reanimator, but yet again, very similar to Pontiff of Blight. He's just an all-star in black that not a lot of people consider an all-star, but to me, I just think he has that potential of putting in so much work in those decks. The next here we have Summoner's Pact. 0 mana and green to search up a green creature card from your deck and put it into your hand. And during your next upkeep you have to pay the 4 mana or you lose the game, similar to the other packs, Slaughter Pact I just mentioned on this list here. And the automatic comparison here would be Green Sun Zenith. Now I know this may not be that much of a comparison because Green Sun Zenith just puts the green creature onto the battlefield. Here's why I think Summoner's Pact is better. It's technically 1 mana cheaper than Green Sun Zenith. All you're doing here is you're paying the 0 mana to search the green creature up. And then you have all the mana to work with after that to play that creature. And yeah, you have the potential of losing the game or just being tapped down to a significant degree to where you can't do anything your next turn. However, usually when you search up a creature like this and try to get it out by spending 0 mana here just to search it up in the first place, you're usually doing that to win the game on that turn. So why would I be worried about my next turn if what I'm doing now is going to help me win the game? It's 0 mana. You don't have to put any more work into it. You just search up something like a Craterhoof Behemoth. You search up something like a Progenitus, because that's a green creature, and then you play it. Super funny, and I like it. I think it's very overlooked. Most people prefer Green Sun Zenith because I guess it shuffles back into their library, so they get more uses out of it later in the game. When it comes to those 2 cards, I like this card over Green Sun Zenith, personally. And then we have Noxious Revival. So you can pay 1 green mana or 2 life to put any card from a graveyard onto its owner's library on the top. So right there, it's basically just going to get back your biggest threat in your graveyard onto the top of your deck. Well, huge benefit right here is very similar to Summoner's Pact, where you're not going to be spending a lot of mana at all. Ideally, you only want to pay the 2 life there. It is an instant speed, so you can wait till your opponent's end step to do this. So the first card you draw there is going to be that creature, which is excellent, and it definitely helps avoid any sort of answers that your opponents can have for that by waiting at their end step to do it. So that's super useful, especially in green. You don't see a lot of good instants like these in green, and for relatively free mana, you're almost never going to pay that 1 green. I mean, 2 life, you're likely going to be tapped out the turn before. You're going to wait and then play it, so it's basically just a free recursion card, which is pretty good in green. Anyway guys, that was my 10 underrated commander cards list. Hope you enjoyed it. Please subscribe to my channel if you like this video. You might like my other videos. I do a lot of cool top 10s as well, and I do a lot of cool deck tech, so be sure to check those out. Anyway, you guys have a wonderful day. Void here, signing off.